I'm John.
I'm Rob.
And this is the Mint One podcast,
where we talk all things Web3 and the rise of blockchain gaming.
So Rob, Ordinals have been one of the biggest things to hit blockchain this year.
They have. Apparently they make Bitcoin fun again. But what are they?
Okay, before we get into it, if you're on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, a 5-star podcast review would be great. And follow us on Twitter at Mint1Pod. So, Rob, Ordinals. I think we very, very briefly talked about them back in April as part of a bigger episode, but we didn't give them much attention. And it's been we're approaching 6 months since Ordinals really exploded onto the scene. And now I think the hype has died down a little bit, and we're getting into some more of the, I suppose, the more real applications of Ordinals. It's probably a good time for us to revisit the topic. So, do you have any Ordinals? First things first.
So no, I don't have them.
Neither do I.
That shouldn't come as a massive surprise with me. I am not against buying them, but at the moment they lack utility, and I'm bored of banging that particular drum. Before we get into any more, we should say this episode is recommended. It was a recommended topic in the comment section. We always say, comment what you want us to talk about, and we'll talk about it. And this is proof that we will do that. Shizzy DeFi commented, I wish you guys would talk more about Ordinals. So Shizzy DeFi, we are talking more about Ordinals. In fact, we're doing an entire episode on Ordinals. But yes, so suggest us stuff, because we like that. We like to dive into things that perhaps we haven't thought of, because we're a little bit similar in our vision. John's slightly more towards NFTs, but our scope is perhaps a little bit narrow. So come at us with ideas. But yes, Ordinals. The reason I knew about them, I mean, obviously you couldn't avoid, at the start of the year, you couldn't avoid the news articles about them. But what caught my attention was, I don't know if you remember, and this is the first time we mentioned it on the pod, was the Doom port.
Yes.
Someone made Doom on Ordinals. I don't even know if that's still up anymore. It wasn't actual Doom. It was sort of Doom inspired.
If it was inscripted to Satoshi, then feasibly it's still there, and you can still play Doom.
It was browser based, so you could just you could play Doom. But no, I don't own any. I'm not against it. Just at the moment it seems a little light on interesting projects to me.
I mean, it seemed very. The first time I remember hearing about it is hearing that there's these new Bitcoin NFTs and people are tracking purchases and sales through like a public Google Doc. I was like, what the hell is this? Like, this was before there were any Ordinals marketplaces. Yeah. So it was just, the community's just come to the, this kind of collective ambition that we're going to track everything through this Google Doc. And for a while, somehow it worked. But yeah, it seemed like every man and his donkey was rushing to get on the Ordinals game as soon as they became, I guess, more easy to create. Yeah. Doing some research before this episode, they were technically available to become a thing on Bitcoin back in November 21.
So yeah, it was possible. It wasn't possible to do this pre-November 2021, but the Taproot upgrade allowed more complex smart contracts to be executed on the Bitcoin blockchain, and from that, Ordinals was born. So for anyone that doesn't know what Ordinals are, it's the Ordinals. In fact, you know what? I'm going to read. It was invented by Casey Rodemore, and he proposed. It feels like it's been around for ages, but he proposed it in January 2023, and they only really started being inscribed in April 2023. So not that long ago, really. But inscription Satoshi's, what are we talking about? Let's perhaps explain that a little bit more. Yeah. So, how Rodemore, that sounds such a Lord of the Rings name to me. How he describes Ordinals is the Ordinals protocol is just a system for numbering Satoshis, giving individual sats a serial number and then tracking them across transactions. So that probably muddied the water further, but essentially a Bitcoin can be split into Satoshis, which is the smallest unit of Bitcoin. And what this does, what the Ordinals protocol does, is attaches essentially a serial number to each Satoshi, so that they can be tracked and used. And this allows data to be stored, basically, different forms of data to be stored with Satoshis, and thus you get NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain, which people didn't think was possible, and it wasn't until November 2021, but it wasn't until this year that we saw people making use of it.
Yeah. So that's kind of the gist of I suppose what ordinals are.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to my point, as I said, every man and his donkey kind of got on board the ordinals train when they sprung into life in April of 23, and including all the big players, your Bored Apes, Yuga Labs, and then also the guys behind Utes. So everyone was like, it was basically another land grab. It was rolling the clock back to 2021, where everyone just kind of jumped into this NFT space and just started playing around with things and figuring out what they can do. The same thing happened with Ordinals back in April 23. I think it was somewhat more limited in scope because, especially as I said, when Ordinals first came around in April, whereas it was simple enough to create them, to be able to trade them and buy them and get a hold of one was not as easy. There were very few kind of wallets that would display your ordinals. There was basically no marketplaces. It was tricky, and when it sprung up in the first place, I tried to kind of deep dive in. I was like, oh, there's this new ordinals thing, how can I get involved? And then quickly found out it was a hell of a lot more complicated than the kind of Web3 I'd come to know and love, I suppose. Yeah. So it wasn't as easy as, you just download this wallet and then you go on this website and you can just buy and sell things. It's pretty simple. It was a bit of a handful. But I think where we are today in August of 23, it's now much simpler to acquire an ordinal, buy, sell and trade them on various marketplaces. And there's this essence of maturity we're starting to get in the ordinal space, which hopefully will lead to more tangible applications of it.
Yeah, I would like to see certainly more interesting applications of it. There are limitations. So when a piece of metadata is attached to the Satoshi, it can be anything. I didn't know it could be quite literally anything. It could be text, it could be image, it could be video, it could be code, it could be whatever. And this is stored on chain. It's stored on the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain. And it's linked to each Satoshi's identifier, but there is a current limitation of 4 megabytes per Satoshi because Bitcoin blockchain has a limit on the size of transactions. So I don't know how much that impairs. I don't think that's a massive blocker. I imagine every blockchain has to put a limit on the size of transactions. So perhaps that's not too much of a blocker. When it comes to the complexity of the whole ecosystem, there's only one area which I'm still foggy on, which is creating, that is inscribing these Satoshis, because it sounds like, or this is how it used to be, and I presume it's still the same unless somebody's come up with a system for it, you had to run a Bitcoin node to actually do the minting in inverted commas. I looked at a quick guide to creating an ordinal, and it said, the first step in the creation of ordinals is users downloading Bitcoin Core and syncing to their node on the blockchain. After the sync is completed, the next step is to create an ordinals wallet and send some Satoshis to that wallet. So it sounds like you need a node, which feels like a blocker.
Yeah, so I think originally that's why pickup of ordinals was so slow. Is that you already needed a full Bitcoin node, and then it just wasn't a fantastic user experience. There have been some kind of man in the middle services pop up since, Gamma being one of them, where it's basically just a set of creator tools. So it's like, oh hey, I assume, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I assume it's basically like you pay them to use their node to create your...
That's what I wondered, if somebody had multiple nodes and they could just rent out the ability to mint.
I imagine the people doing it have made a ridiculous amount of money. That's fine.
Money's an interesting topic here. So one point I want to make before I forget is that I don't know what you feel about this, but I think if Rodemore could have come up with this idea in November 2021, I think it could have changed the entire landscape of Web3 and crypto.
Yes, possibly.
If he'd done it before, I mean, November 2021 is perhaps a little bit too late. Perhaps. If it had been November 2020 or early 2021, basically, if it had been before NFTs started hitting all-time highs, I wonder if it would have really challenged Ethereum in various ways, particularly with art NFTs, because it seems to cater for art NFTs quite well. It's difficult. I'm not sure, but that was kind of a side point anyway.
I think it's something I can just add on to that is, do I personally think Bitcoin would have become the Ethereum of today? Probably not. No. I think there's more like technical limitations with ordinals that would prevent that. And I mean, if you look at Ethereum, there's 1 billion and one ways people have built on top of it, have created layer 2 networks, specific layer 2 networks for specific things. And that seems to be where most of the kind of investment money is going. Yeah. For every investment that seems to happen in the Web3 space, I've not heard all too much about any firms really putting lump sums behind development of ordinal tech. I don't know if you may have.
Not massively, no. I certainly, it wouldn't have been able to challenge Ethereum across the whole of Web3, but I do think it would have taken a real chunk out of Ethereum's control over particularly art NFTs. For example, and this is, so if I was going to buy an ordinal, I would certainly like to buy one of them that I don't know the price, but it was one of the most desirable. Someone essentially inscribed the first Satoshi ever mined, which is, I think that's really cool. I think that would be great to own that. And then apparently the Satoshis spike in value if they were also the first mined after a halving epoch and so on. So that's quite cool. And if I could own one, I would. But the money moving around in the ecosystem is ramping up, not down, for one. And two, there's been some, pretty impressive sales. The most expensive, I looked up the most, so here's a question for you, because I apparently have incomplete research. The Ordinal Punks, is that owned by Yuga, or is that just a copycat?
I believe it's copycat. I will double check.
I thought it was copycat, but then you mentioned Yuga, and I wondered if perhaps...
Yeah, Yuga were...
Because they did something, didn't they?
Yes, they did. This is on-pod research.
I will continue my point while you're doing
go
that.
for it.
So the most expensive Ordinals NFT that has sold at the point of this recording is Ordinal Punk 78, which sold for 50 Bitcoin, which at the time of sale is 1.2 million. So crazy. I don't know how much the first Satoshi ever mined was. Apparently it was less than that. I would have thought that feels like a piece of history. That feels more, to me, I'd rather, if I'm going to own something that doesn't do anything, I'd rather own that thing that doesn't do anything than a punk that doesn't do anything. But, each their own. So this month, the total, I didn't really fully understand this, but the total minted value of ordinals has surpassed $1 million this month. Does that mean over $1 million worth of Satoshis have been inscribed on? Or does it mean the arbitrary value people have given to their minted Satoshi or inscribed... God, so many terms.
I would assume it's like $1 million worth of Satoshis that was now been inscribed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's go with that, because that's the only one that really makes any sense, given that one sold for more than that alone. But this month, over $1 million, it passed the $1 million mark of Satoshis that have been inscribed, which is not a small amount. Although it doesn't change anything really.
No, I mean it's a drop in the water compared to the total market cap of Bitcoin,
of course,
which
or Ethereum or NFTs or anything.
Yeah, I mean, as of recording, is currently half $1 trillion. So,
yeah,
it is 0.0x% of that. But, I mean, if you were to say at the start of the year that we'd have $1 million worth of Satoshis that have ordinals inscripted on them, that would probably be a lot more than many people thought. So I've looked up Yuga's Ordinals project. It's called 12-fold, and it's basically just a load of like coloured spheres on a background. So unrelated to the ordinal punks. But I mean, looking at a number of Ordinals marketplaces, I'm looking at both Ordinals Market and Magic Eden at the moment. It seems like a lot of the top projects are, inscribed Pepes and the inscribed versions of the gods, and projects that are basically like the Bitcoin / inscribed version of X project.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. Inscribed Pepes, Bitcoin frogs, Bitcoin punks, ordinal penguins. It's like apes on Bitcoin, for example.
Yeah, it's a lot of people just trying to see if they can make a quick buck out of it. Like I saw ordinal punks, obviously. Then I saw Bitcoin rocks, 100 rocks. In fact, so I wrote these notes the other day, and I wrote Bitcoin rocks, 100 rocks. Yep. And that, I'm glad I wrote that, because that exactly summarizes how I feel. I just don't care. Then there was slightly more interesting is ordinal loops, which was 100 looping animations by Flowstay. It seems to be kind of a big deal in the ordinal space, actually.
Well, at least there's something a little more original.
Yeah, but someone dared to put a little bit of effort in, didn't just have something algorithmically generated, and oh my god,
I mean,
it winds me out.
If I go to Ordinals Market and search the most trending collections all time, I have to go quite a while before I find anything original. Like, top one's Bitcoin Punks, which is also just like a Punks clone. Second one is 12-fold, which, I mean, fair play to Yuga. The third is a Azuki clone. The fourth is, what in the hell is this thing? That's like a Bad Me character. Bitcoin Milady Maker. Okay, cool. Doge Punks, Bitcoin Bored Ape Yacht Club, Flipped Frogs, Bitcoin Summer, which is a bridge collection. Yeah, it's just a lot of... Yeah, and this is my... To move on to kind of my point of bringing that up, is it's kind of my issue with Ordinals, is that there's very few things happening on it that are original. For the most part, it's just a lot of clones and a lot of people that have been like, how quickly can I clone this popular NFT collection on Ordinals and make a shitload of money?
That is exactly, it feels like that is the objective of too many of the things on there. Like I was looking for original work, and I did find some. There's something called Taproot Wizards, which is 2,101 hand-drawn wizards by UD Wertheimer and Luxor, which is one of the biggest Bitcoin mining companies. So presumably they used all their nodes to do it. And it's at least original. But I mean, when they say hand-drawn, they don't mean... I mean, I don't want to insult it, but it's
hand-drawn in the literal...
Like
imagine a child
hand-drawn with a mouse.
Yes.
Yeah. But, I mean, perhaps he's an amazing artist and he chose that style.
Sure.
Perhaps not. Who knows? I don't know him. But good luck to him. But it does feel... Obviously, you know how I feel about just these low-effort art NFTs. And I was jaded when they were all-time highing, and I am... beyond jaded with them now. I mean, they do nothing for me. And I would like to see more projects. Now, I looked at games, because theoretically you could have games that use ordinals. There is nothing that you can play right now, but that's fine, because it only started really in April. That's when the first ordinal was sold in May this year. So we've only had like 3.5 months maybe of things moving. So fair enough. Even if you give it until January, it's only been like 7 months. However, there are a few projects that are working at building games. There's one called Ordinal Legends. Ordinal Legends. Why does everybody have to brand themselves with wherever they are? Like, I hate mention of any crypto bro language. I hate mention of just make your damn game and give it a name that describes the game, or something cool to do with it. You don't have to put crypto and Bitcoin and everything everywhere. I was
going to say, as an extension to that, I, in general, dislike any Web3 game that puts any Web3 language in it, whether it's like block or like, I don't know, some fangled way of saying NFT, or just stop.
It ages the project.
Yeah, it ages it into it. It limits who would potentially want to actually play the damn thing.
Yeah,
you have Gods Unchained and Skyweave, and if you didn't know those were Web3 games, you wouldn't have a clue by the name. And to be fair, even going on the website, you wouldn't even know unless you scroll down a bit, and then they talk about making money, and you're like, oh, okay.
What I remember so it must have been about 2 years ago, I tried the first free alpha client of Hodl God. And I wrote my review of it, or like my preview, and I was like, it's a really promising game. I like the concept. God, I hate the name.
Change the damn name.
I said that in like 2021. I was like, don't call it Hodl God. Also, it has nothing to actually do with crypto. Just there's things that are... anyway, so this game is Ordinal Legends, is a play-to-earn game. So that's a double L for me at the moment. It's being developed by the team behind the Ordinals protocol, though. So I like that.
Okay,
that's cool. At least they're doing interesting stuff. It's allowing players to collect and battle Ordinals. That's very little information. I've just said Ordinals like 9 times. It
sounds like Illuvium, but on Bitcoin.
I think it sounds slightly less than that.
No, fair.
But whatever. At least it's the team behind Ordinals. And then there was the only other one I really found was Ordinal Worlds, which is a metaverse project. That feels pretty ambitious to build a metaverse on the Ordinals protocol, but I like ambition, so I mean, go for it. And that's being developed by the team behind the Taproot Wizards project I just spoke about. Hopefully they branch out with the art style.
I was going to say, I'm not sure I want to be in a metaverse with that art. So I mean, it could be some sort of weird fever dream, but
it could almost be cool if you did like an MS Paint metaverse. But still, I'm not sure how well that lasts forever. But the project allows players to create and explore virtual worlds using Ordinals. Again, zero information in that sentence. But at least people are building stuff on there, which is what we want to see. Because as negative as I've been in places here, I actually really like Ordinals as a concept, as an idea. I think Bitcoin is obviously the founding father and is the least likely to go anywhere, and it's got dedicated space. So in the intro, I was quoting Casey Rodemore, who said he was trying to make Bitcoin fun again, which, as I said off air, sounds a bit MAGA for my tastes. But it's a cool idea, and Bitcoin is a bit boring. I mean, it's not trying to be interesting. That's not its function. But it would be good to see some more functionality and some more interesting things happening on Bitcoin, and that is exactly what this is. I think the timing is a little unfortunate for Ordinals because they're so deep in a crypto winter that it's probably gating the amount of adoption they're getting.
Yeah, it's unfortunate timing, especially this week. The dips that Bitcoin, Ethereum, and as a result, the rest of the market saw it. The timing hasn't really worked out for them. But again, I think that's another one of my kind of pet peeves with Ordinals right now. I love it as a technical kind of technical demonstration of what's possible.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we've been able to effectively put NFTs on Bitcoin. That's really cool.
It is very cool.
But
it's clever.
Very, very clever. And as as a showcase of the expertise of that team and what they're able to do, awesome. I love it. But in terms of what utility it has, and at the end of the day, what use cases it would have for an everyday person, which we have to link the two because ultimately that's kind of the point. I don't see Ordinals as being something that's really going to push the boat out in terms of, onboarding or, it just seems to be the new toy for crypto bros to play with rather than something that's going to be a revolution for blockchain.
Yeah. I mean, there's two ways of looking at it. Perhaps it's only really one way, because you can do more or less everything you could with NFTs outside of Bitcoin on Bitcoin now, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But let's look at some of the useful applications such as tickets for things, or proof of authenticity or proof of attendance. Yes, you could do that on Ordinals now, and that's really cool. But why would you over Ethereum, where there's the infrastructure in place to do these sort of things, where you wouldn't have to do things in a bespoke manner, which isn't necessarily a criticism of Ordinals, because the timing is obviously the amount of time they've had to mature is vastly different. But I think Ordinals needs to be able to offer a USP somewhere along the line to separate itself, other than, I mean, its USP at the moment is that Bitcoin is, the Bitcoin maximalists will say, oh, Bitcoin's the only one that, the only real true crypto, it's the only one that matters. So that's kind of their USP, but I'm not sure that's enough.
No, I mean, the only possible USP I could have seen or have read on so far is Chainalysis did a report on Ordinals a while ago, where it said, they do present some interesting potential use cases. For example, using Ordinals to inscribe ESG compliance on newly mined Satoshis. Which
oh wow, that's a very clever idea.
It's very clever. There is utility there.
It's a loose US, but
it's a very loose
mainstream
US,
adoption.
Yeah, exactly. To an everyday person, I mean, first off, they won't know what ESG compliance is, and second, it's not really going to affect how they interact with anything Web3 related. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's cool tech, but it's back end tech. It's not something that the person at the front end who may end up with an Ordinal is ever going to know and or care about. So, doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It has a lot of value, but it's limited in kind of wider scope, let's say.
Yeah, I don't think it should try and go toe to toe with Ethereum for these.
No, absolutely not. No.
It should try and forge its own path. I think what's interesting. So I've got a section called criticisms, which aren't my criticisms, but rather far smarter, techier people's criticisms of Ordinals.
Okay.
And although they're criticisms, they're pretty light or reasonably light, but they're really interesting. And I think they tell you a lot about the space. So this is arguably my favorite, is a few people were worried that it could affect the fungibility of Bitcoin. I was like, how could it do that? But it makes perfect sense, right? Because Ordinals make it easier to track the ownership of Satoshis. So the fungibility changes as Satoshis have varying values and are therefore not interchangeable. So if you had a Satoshi that had something amazing inscribed on it, and then you had a Satoshi that had nothing inscribed on it, then they're not of equal values. Then it's no longer fungible. It's no longer fungible. I mean, you can't swap them without loss.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
If you take that to the nth extreme, let's say that, 50% of Bitcoins had Ordinals inscribed on them, then it gets to a point where it just affects the liquidity of Bitcoin itself, where, you get to a point where, as you say, these Satoshis with Ordinals inscribed on them, that's interesting language to wrap your head around. But anyway, if there's so many of them that, these particular Satoshis have to be ascribed to this person and can't be given to somebody else, then that certainly takes Bitcoin out of the pool. So
yes,
but that is, as we're currently at $1 million of $500 billion, I don't think it's going to be a problem anytime soon
now. And this was perfectly coming on from that, is one of the other prevalent criticisms I think is a real long shot, but they were worried that any sort of success in the Ordinal space will lead to more volatility with the Bitcoin price and market manipulation. I think that's a real long shot. I mean, it's not
a long shot.
It's not impossible, but that seems wildly unlikely to me that Bitcoin volatility would go up any meaningful amount from Ordinals. It's not. It's not impossible, but
I think I've got two responses to that. First of all, I think it's only really a problem if a large amount of Bitcoin has inscriptions on it. And then if all of a sudden half of Bitcoins are worth more than the other half of Bitcoins, then you do run into problems. But secondly, obviously Ordinals work in a very different way to regular NFTs, but Ethereum at its core is basically, its value is generated from what it enables and allows people to do with NFTs on Ethereum. So yes, it is a currency in and of itself, But I think a large part of the value of Ethereum as a blockchain is because it is the most popular one for NFTs, and people can, put art NFTs on it or game NFTs, and you can build on top of it and do blah, 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 blah. So there is a tangible link between NFTs and the value of the Ethereum chain, at least in my mind. Of course, market situations will always change. I guess they will always ultimately have the deciding factor on price. But do I think Ethereum will be worth $1,600 today if it wasn't the number one chain for NFTs? Probably not. It will probably still be worth quite a lot. It would probably still be the second biggest cryptocurrency. But do I think it'd be worth as much as it is today? Probably not.
No, I agree. It also, funnily enough, the third prevalent criticism is kind of echoes Ethereum's arc. And this is probably the most common criticism that I could find, was that people are worried that it's going to waste block space by making these inscriptions, and it will increase the transaction cost, make the network slower, and make the network less efficient. Now, we basically saw those happen to Ethereum.
Yeah, and it is hard to argue against that when you see some of the things that are being inscribed.
And particularly because, ordinals, Bitcoin was never meant to be a vehicle for NFTs. Ethereum was made for a completely different purpose in many ways. I mean, that's not strictly true, but it was, it has pivoted to being this multifaceted chain that is meant to host lots of things now. Like that, it's no accident that now happens. Whereas Bitcoin was just meant to be a cryptocurrency. It wasn't meant to have all these things floating around it and on it, which is now the case.
Yeah.
So that could, I wonder if it could, I don't know how you would measure it or how the scales would really, it's way too complicated. But if Ordinals saw any real success and started slowing the network down, which would be better for Bitcoin's price, the success of Ordinals, or so that would be the positive, or the negative of the slower network and higher transaction fees? Would that detract more from Bitcoin than Ordinals give? It could be messy if we saw mainstream adoption or any real huge buzz around it, which at the moment, as you say, it's very much a crypto-centric thing. It's most people in crypto don't seem to really know that about it at all.
Here's where we get into the discussion of, are Ordinals actually adding to the value of Bitcoin? And I'm sure a lot of people are like, I don't know if Ordinals maxis are a term, but if there are Ordinals maxis out
surely
there,
there's
I'm sure that they would argue that Ordinals are providing a benefit to Bitcoin as a whole, as in the Satoshi that they own is now worth more because it has an inscription on it. But nothing's ever as black and white as that. And I mean, as we've discussed, there's issues of liquidity, there's issues of value, there's a lot of things that have to be worked out. But again, a lot of those also apply to other cryptocurrencies. So it's not as if a lot of these are an Ordinals only problem, although some of them are. I mean, as you said, Bitcoin was designed to be new money. Bankless, governmentless. That's not a word. Anyway, you know what I mean.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, designed to be a monetary store of value, let's say. Or store of monetary value, that makes more sense. Whereas Ethereum was that, but it was also, you can build things on this, and you can write smart contracts, and you can play around with it a bit more. It was designed to be more than just a store of value, which is why I understand why some Bitcoin maxis are like, how dare you do this to this financial instrument? Because it is kind of, it would be like, I don't know, if you could take a £5 note in my wallet, and for whatever reason that £5 note is also my ownership of, I don't know, a Kit Kat or something. Like that seems a strange thing to do. Like, why would I link money to? I'm not saying I own the £5 note and I own the Kit Kat. It's I own the £5 note and that £5 note, or like the note owns the Kit Kat. So I give the note to someone else, they also own the Kit. It gets very complicated rather quickly for no or very few discernible benefits, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's having a profound impact in either direction at the moment. It is interesting. I think the fungibility question is kind of what we're getting back to, where, I mean, could a Satoshi in theory be worth less if it was inscribed with something shit? So you could say, I'll give you 1 Satoshi for that Kit Kat, and you go, I really like Kit Kats, but fine, okay, I'll have 1 Satoshi for this Kit Kat. And then you get a Satoshi and I've inscribed like Mein Kampf in it. Like, that's now a less valuable Satoshi than one without.
To some people, not either of us, people are like, oh my God, Mein Kampf on a Satoshi. But anyway, what I think would be maybe not necessarily a better example, but let's say someone inscribed on a Satoshi some sort of bit of code that, I don't know, gave your wallet address to a third party or gave your login details or whatever, then something that would hack you in some way, then you would quite literally have a Satoshi that's worth less than the face value. I'm not saying anyone go out and do this, by the way, please don't.
Can you uninscribe?
See, this is... With most blockchains,
on chain, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly. It's on chain. So, I'm surprised. Surely someone tried to do this with like another chain or an NFT of some sort. But you own this NFT, and I know back in the day on Open, like people would send you NFTs on OpenSea, and if you clicked on them, they'd drain your wallet. I think that's less of a problem nowadays.
Yeah, I think they stopped that. Good Lord.
But yeah, there's still, if you give people an outlet to which they can put anything on a Satoshi or anything on an NFT, and then there's certainly going to be people that try and find ways to abuse that for gain in some way.
Oh yeah, so I mean that happens with anything though, doesn't it?
Yeah,
we can't stop
but
that.
At least with NFTs, it's not like you're putting an NFT on an Ethereum or an Ether. It almost exists separately to that. Whereas with Ordinals, you're literally putting the code on the Satoshi itself. So if it's something you don't want, surely that starts to cause problem.
Yeah, it's kind of a clumsy solution, but it's the only solution if you want to have NFTs on Bitcoin. So it's certainly not the ideal path.
No.
But what's your overall? Let's sort of walk into a summary. What are your feelings about Ordinals overall?
So overall, the tech is great. I think it's very, very cool that some very smart people have figured out a way to put a form of NFTs, in a sense, onto Ordinals. Are they for me right now? No. Are they for the wider public right now? No. Will they be in future? Who knows? I think we've got to do something more than what we have now. I'm not sure if the current tech for Ordinals really presents utility in a way that is of value to an everyday person. So, I mean, as I said, it's more a crypto bros play toy right now, and for me, it's hard to look past that.
I'm not that far off that. I think it's very interesting. It's very clever. Didn't think it would be something we'd ever see, so that's really cool. I don't think it knows what it is yet.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, can we do this? Oh shit, we can do this. So let's they did it. Yeah. Which I mean, don't get me wrong. That sounds like I'm saying that in a derogatory way. That's how a lot of awesome things are made. So I think it's really cool, and it's something I'm gonna follow for the foreseeable. I think it's an interesting project, but it needs something. It needs something. Yep. I don't want its USP to primarily be that it's on Bitcoin, and they didn't, and that wasn't thought to be possible until the Taproot upgrade. So, I don't know what to make of it in terms of most of the NFTs that aren't interesting to me. There isn't much utility in the space yet. Games, again, I'm not really sure why you would pick Ordinals over something else, other than to say, I'm the first Ordinals game, or or to use that as sort of a secondary USP for your game, like we're on Ordinals, and maybe get players through that. But yeah, I just want to see. I want to see some more cool stuff. It's such a innovative idea that I'd like to see more innovation within it as an ecosystem. That's really my takeaway.
I think its biggest problem really is it's just too late to the party. mean, as I said, I think
Possibly,
if it come about in early 21, and with it being, or what I guess with its current use case being pretty much just art, I could have seen things like, I don't know, Beeple's Everydays being sold on Ordinals rather than as an NFT, and other big pieces. And then Ordinals could have stood out as, Ordinals is the art chain and Ethereum is the one for games. That, I think, is something that very well could have happened.
Yeah.
But now we're in a situation where Bitcoin kind of rules everything, and Bitcoin layer 2s like Polygon, not Bitcoin layer 2s, Ethereum layer 2s like Polygon and Mutable X, etc. And that doesn't really feel like there's a place for Ordinals.
No,
right now.
It needs its own identity. It needs to forge its own path above and beyond, Bitcoin itself.
I think if ESG compliance becomes something that happens a lot with Ordinals, then sure, I guess that's
a very clever use.
That could count Ordinals as having some sort of business, like sole business use, which could be cool. But yeah, just as art, as it which is right now,
people. It just feels very experimentary to do that. But who knows where it'll go? You just don't know in this space. Suddenly, someone crazy like Elon will make it the official blockchain of Twitter and or X, and then that's that.
Yeah, I mean, we're less than 6 months into Ordinals really being a part of the Web3 space. So
maybe we revisit in a year or year and a half and see where we're at.
We're technically approaching close to a decade for NFTs.
That's crazy.
Nuts. Anyway, I think that's probably all we have to say on Ordinals. So, episode 76 of the Mint1 podcast is in the airwaves. Rob, where can we find you?
You can find me at Token Gamer News on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days. Have you seen the icon on my phone?
This looks scratched.
It looks dirty.
I don't know
what. It's so infuriating to me.
It's annoying. I've got it in my... So, will anyone be able to see this? I have no idea.
Yes.
Because see, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, like, all nice and clean, and then X just looks like... What have they done?
It looks scratched.
Why?
Oh, God, it's like they're trying to annoy me. You remember those old pictures that used to do the rounds like 15 years ago where there would be a fly on the picture to try and make you flick it off your phone or a bit of dust or something? It's like that. It's so infuriating. Anyway, at Token Gamer News on whatever Elon's platform is called. You can find me on LinkedIn, both personally, Robert Baggs. I mean, drop me a message, fine, why not? And Token Gamer as our LinkedIn page. And then obviously tokengamer.io for the latest blockchain gaming and technology in gaming news. We cover a lot of AI stuff lately because there's so many interesting things happening in gaming that involves AI, and AI and blockchain are combining in very cool ways. So John, where can people find you?
So for me, it is at Hydropowered, HYDRO, PWRD on for everything. To catch up on my sim racing stuff, it's at TopSplit GG on everything. Jesus Christ, I need to get used to saying that a bit more often. I'm uploading YouTube videos several times a week, and you can go to topsplit.gg for that stuff. But that's not Web3, so none of you care. I've just opened my WorldCoin app. They've renamed it to World App because, of course, they have.
Cool.
I think there's another grant.
Oh, yeah, I think I claimed that.
There was a grant on August the 14th, which was a couple of days ago. The next grant is August the 28th. But more importantly, I need to book my my verification with the thingy in London. So, looking forward to that. I'm sure we'll do something around that, whether we do something live or we just talk about it after. I'm sure we can talk about our eye scanning experience with the WorldCoin MLM person and the strange machine, but
that's going to be a surreal experience.
It's going to be an odd experience.
3 places in London.
Was there
2 before, wasn't there?
There was 2, then there was 1.
Now there's 3.
I don't know whether someone broke one of their machines. That sounds like something that would probably happen.
Tech Space, Bright Moments, and Cafe Botanical.
Why can't I look on the app? Are you looking at this on your phone?
I am, yeah. Should
we
do this off air?
Maybe.
This feels a ridiculous thing to end our episode with.
Yeah, it is quite strange.
People just listening to us looking at our phones.
Fantastic. So anyway, Episode 76 of the Mint One podcast is in the books. If you're on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. If you're on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts, 5-star podcast review would be great. You can find us on Twitter at Mint1Pod. Thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. We hope you tune in again next week.